Hi, I'm Linda with Bake It Best. Today I'm going to show you how to make a wonderful gluten-free pie crust. The recipe makes enough for a 2-crust pie, so I'll show you how to make a single crust pie and a 2-crust pie. Before we get started, make sure to clean your surfaces first. You don't know if they've been contaminated with any flour product. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, I start with my Bake It Best all-purpose flour, and I always whisk the flour first to lighten it. Okay, it takes a cup and a half, so I just scoop 1 cup, then I scoop half a cup more. I lighten it first so that it weighs the approximate amount. Okay, now this is simply cornstarch, half a cup of that. Okay, now 4 teaspoons of granulated sugar, 1 large half teaspoon of kosher salt, just a little bit rounded, and xanthan gum. Now I put xanthan gum in our flour, it's already in here, but for some things you need a little more glue, and pie crust is one of them. So it just takes the tiniest little bit, 1/4 teaspoon, do not round it, just like that. Okay, now that all the dry ingredients are in, now we're going to whisk it. Anytime you put xanthan gum in anything, you need to whisk it well, because you don't want to run into a bunch of it later. This is where we start doing things differently. We need 1.5 sticks of unsalted butter, divided in 2. So, using your grater, you just start grating. Okay, now using your hands, lifting from underneath, you separate that butter. I don't do it all at once because it's too hard to separate it into small chunks. Okay, now that's done. So now I'm going to finish the rest of the butter. You can even use frozen butter for this if you buy it on sale when it's inexpensive. Just get the rest of this. Okay, so now I'm just finishing mixing this in, just like the other. And if you can see how this is, the texture of this, you can still see some of the little bits of butter in there. Okay, now for the next step, I'm going to beat the egg. Okay, now 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and that's kind of an unusual thing to go in pie crust, but it works. I always use pure vanilla. Okay, now back to my handy dandy mixing tools. I want to keep it nice and fluffy still, very separated. Okay, now I think it's pretty well mixed. Now I'm going to start adding the water. This is ice water, just simply ice water. I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons. If it was summertime, I wouldn't be able to put so much water in. Summertime was nice and humid, but right now the air is very dry. Okay, I can start to squeeze it and it stays together, but not really well. So I'm going to add another tablespoon, sprinkle it over the top, see if that's maybe good enough. Oh, it is coming together better. The heat from your hands will really melt the butter also. Okay, I'm going to add a touch more. We'll call that good. See, it's sticking really well. Going to dump it onto the counter. Finish kneading it, bring it together. See how it's coming together? Okay, now that we have it all pretty much in one ball, I have 1 container with a little bit of flour in it. I'm going to use that flour to set on the table to help me rolling it. I divide it in half, some of my Bake It Best. And I've sprinkled some, but not too much. So anytime you want to roll a circle, you always start with a round shape. Okay, so all I'm doing is making it a little larger. See, it's still round, makes it easier. Okay, now I'm going to press this into my floured surface, pick it up, sprinkle a little more flour there, we're good to go, okay? And remember with the rolling pin, do not use a wooden one if you've ever used it for anything other than gluten-free baking, okay? So what I'm going to do is move this constantly to keep it from sticking. You just flip it up over your rolling pin, move it a bit. I always keep the bottom on the bottom and the top on the top. Now this only has to be as large as 1 inch beyond the edge of your pan. This is the pie dish we're going to use, so we are 1 inch beyond. The easiest way to do this is to use a cake cardboard. You're going to slide it under the edge of your pie crust. Makes it so easy to pick up and do things with. Okay, now we're going to set the pie dish on top and we're going to cut 1 inch all the way around, or approximately 1 inch. Now, all you have to do is lift it upside down, the right side up, and there's your pie crust. It folds down in there so easily, no tearing, no nothing. Okay, then all I do is simply trim it. If I'm going to just fold up under the edges, I'm going to cut it just a little bit beyond the edge of the pie dish. So then I can fold it over. This pie crust is a dream to work with. Okay, so I'm just folding under the edge. And then I'm going to flute it. Everybody flutes differently. However you want to flute it is fine. Okay, so now I'm just evening it out a bit, and now I'm fluting. If you're going to make a one crust pie, we're going to poke this with a fork to make sure it doesn't raise or bubble. We're going to stick it in the freezer while the oven is heating. When I poke it mostly around the outside bottom edge. Then you're going to stick it in the oven and bake it for about 25 minutes at 350 degrees. If you notice that we're getting a bubble in it, you would just simply slice that open and it'll just flatten back down again and you can finish baking it. Okay, let me show you what that looks like when it's all done. Here's one I baked earlier today. Beautiful, huh? So this could be filled now with a chocolate pudding pie or a lemon meringue pie. Okay, something that does not get baked goes in these.